Evening, everyone. My name's James. I have a book of short stories. This is my first fiction work. It's called Devourings, and it's the overarching theme is of being consumed or being enveloped, and I have just a handful of the shortest pieces from the book. Thanks. This is titled Steal from Thieves. There is a point at which the red and the clear rivers meet. The clear river, melodious, nameless, weightless, starts deep in the mountains. It travels by waterfall and white gushing streams. Where thin, the camel path trespasses through it on stepping stones or by braving the wet mud. At its heaviest, rope and thoywood bridges traverse the streams. The red river, Tal Halalim, starts lower than the breathless altitudes that espouse the other. It gulps greedily at the heavy clays of the lower mountains, ingesting their salts and colouring itself brightly. We made our house from the red clays, at the banks of where the two rivers meet. We spent several days trapped in a single room when the peaks sent down a thick blizzard. We watched Berber boys in sheepskin tunics, bound gracefully across the snow, ibec of foot and feral to the ear. Their high-pitched whoops mimicked the war cries of their ancestors, or maybe the mating call to their mountain co-inhabitants, just as melodious, nameless and weightless as the river they trailed down to us. My wife was stronger than me after the days of fast. She whispered to me some Tuareg words we had learned together. Those who live under the waterfall do not hear it roar. Thanks very much. I have copies of the book with me if anyone's interested. Well, I just have a handful with me. I'll be on the lunch table. We are, if you will, in World War II Poland. This is called The Looming Deaths of Krzysztof Zajec. A soft black rain fell around a young couple as they traced a slow path entwined between high coniferous pines. The boy, vulpine and unkempt, with a wild blonde wave that poked out even under the rain, was handsome and bright. His eyes darted between the trees and his ears caught every rustle in the changing wind. He closed his brow and pointed his nose towards the girl when he spoke, narrowing her weak blue eyes. The arm around the girl was young and willowy but sweated with dirt and work. "Do you think everything will be different after the wedding?" he said. "With us, I mean." "It's bound to be a little different," Elisa said. Her lips were thin, but she touched Krzysztof's neck and cheeks with them often. Her dark green cloak attracted the forest rain, and its heavy felt thickened. Her cheekbones were pinkish apples, and her nose was flat at the tip. She was the daughter of an influential diplomat. Krzysztof nodded with pensive agreement, and with Elisa he sat down on a hollowed felled tree slippery with rainwater. They kissed closely. Krzysztof reached into his pocket and showed Elisa a clasp of official papers. Each was headed with ornate governmental wording and shields of exotic animals. Each paper bore a new name. In Italy he was Pietro Scalia, in Joseph he was Joseph Lurban. Swedish, Russian, Finnish. French papers continued to obfuscate the young man, a brilliant mosaic of tongue-rolling languages and invented names. "And when are you Krzysztof?" Elisa said. "When I'm with you." "How sad that Krzysztof dies when he leaves me." "Elisa," Krzysztof became passionate, lion-hearted. "When Krzysztof dies, Pietro Scalia is let into the bunkers. Joseph Leuven meets his helpers, and we blow up supply lines in the night. Then Guy Benoit Roem escapes into the dawn. Mikhail Ivanov journeys to safety, and they all die together. And I become the Finnish student here." Krzysztof picked up one of the documents sealed with elaborate blue and white, or a Swiss translator here. The falling rain felt strange. It seemed not to come from any particular direction. Elisa's heart was a bass drum of love and agony. "When their supply lines are gone, when those bastards are trapped and starved, then I can be Krzysztof always for you, but first it has to be this." "My father thinks you already died, darling. And this is why I have to marry Mr. Lutoslavsky. I wish I could tell him. I wish I could tell them both." "I promise, Elisa, I won't be dead for long." Quieted by sadness, the couple held each other closer as they kicked a stone back to the edge of the tree line and Elisa's family home. Elisa fought back tears Krzysztof allowed just one to trace a slow path down his cheek. 3 soldiers sprang from behind the wall at the gate of Elise's father's house, brisk and aggressive. "You're naive to come back, Zaj," the first soldier said. His hands around his rifle were backed with thick black hairs, and his face was blotched with cold and indignation. The 3 soldiers advanced dangerously. "Run," Elisa whispered to Krzysztof. "Tell them anything they ask," he said, heavily enough for the soldiers to hear him. She spread her young body between Krzysztof and the soldiers as he turned and disappeared flightfully between the trees. The tips of his fingers held hers until he had run too far to reach them. The first soldier took a shot between the pines. He splintered the bark of a tall pine and hit nothing else. Thank you. I just have one more, and afterwards Shikoloi and Nadia will play, both of whom are fantastic. Thanks for having me. This is King Cheetah. The sound of madness swallowed the courtyard. Bellowing and pounding carnivorous rhythm, the shared anger of our entire population, narrowed and forced through the beleaguered gates of the presidential building in masks and painted skin. Its call was righteousness and parity, its demand was blood. The anger trapped President Mbulu inside his retreat. His only remaining claim to power was the burgundy and gold, the pelts inside the building, the white columns scaling the balconies. The anger relentlessly slammed against the high doors, a sea of men and women spitting with injustice, sparing their children from brutalities by committing just one. President Mbulu sat at his desk with red eyes, looking at the mirror on the far side of this room. His hands shook. Broken and friendless, he watched his rule become hysteria over weeks of hostility. Eru, one of Mbulu's chief advisors, came into his president's office, flanked by soldiers. The military men's jet black complexions were fractured by savannah fatigues and ceremonial red berets, their stiff walks stiffened by guns at their side. "If you're looking for beauty in that mirror, King Cheetah, you're searching in the wrong place," Eru said. Mbulu had ruled as King Cheetah since his youth, a tribesman out in the plains, storyteller and drummer with decisiveness and values, naming and modelling his political persona as a creature of skill and beauty and power. "What have you done, Eru?" Mbulu said as the soldiers approached him and held his shoulders. "For every animal, there is another to devour it. You know that as well as I do. You should not have stayed where you were for so long," the advisor replied. The soldiers, still wearing their presidential pins, dragged Mbulu out of his cheetah hide seat. "The hyena will eat the cheetah," he said. "But man will hunt any animal," Mbulu said, his body restrained by his soldiers, his rage restrained by his duty. Eru smiled. "Man can be driven to devour himself." He turned to the soldiers. "Throw the president to his people. Let them judge him." The soldiers gripped fistfuls of Mbulu's clothes, and his decorated heels scoured into the animal hide rugs. They took him to the edge of the balcony, illuminated by a fuzzy sun, and the crowd bayed, their howls freezing Mbulu's blood even in the stifling heat. King Cheetah clawed at nothing. Thank you very much.